So the thought being that like a key, not the only thing, but a key aspect of building trust in the workplace is that aspect of it is support, um, calling out the good things that people do, cheerleading, as you said. I think that makes sense. I think, having worked in the business world for a long time, it begs another philosophical question because it's like if employers are being honest, what do they actually care about? Do they care about that and building that trust, or do they care about just getting, growth or whatever it is, a new product out, profitability, revenues? And I know there's a view which I don't disagree with, that those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can
Exactly.
build, and maybe in many ways, if you build that trust and you have the right employee experience, you'll get more of that. But
Hmm.
like, there's a decent amount of evidence that 73% seems suggested that for some reason employers either don't believe that or it's not true because they don't do it nearly as much as they should. Is it just that it's hard to do? Is it that they're not convinced that it's actually more beneficial? Like, what do you think stopping them? Because if it's as obvious as it seems that that would be better for everybody, why don't we see more companies doing it?
I look at it as a lack of knowledge, lack of education on if they did exhibit more of these behaviors of communication, support, respect, trust, that it would lead to more higher productivity and better revenues, growth, all of that. And I think that if we, and this is my mission, is to get out there and talk to the leaders in the organizations to start exhibiting these behaviors. And I look at it as a from an aspect of turnover. And turnover is when employees leave and then you have to replace them,
Mhm.
which can be incredibly costly to organizations. And to those organizations that speak bottom line, or where are we being getting the revenues and the growth, then the turnover had some say that it's two times as in somebody's annual salary or six times somebody's annual salary once you get up into the C-suite, and that can be costly. And so there are uh, different tactics and different methods so that it does affect the bottom line. You pay attention to people and you start caring about the employees, there's less turnover, which greatly impacts the revenues and the growth.
Mm, mm. What about the part? So I'll a quick story that relates to this. There was a senior executive I was working with once. We were on it was a project that they were leading, and it was a growth project. And in the midst of it, one of the initiatives within the growth project, as often is the case, was like employee engagement, employee experience. Like there was an understanding at a base level that that's important. Um, so the person that was responsible for that thread of it was trying to make the case very much like you are. Like we need to do more around morale and trust and respect and engagement. And the senior executive's response, who's a really talented senior executive, by the way, like not somebody
Mhm.
that was incompetent or anything like that, was like, yeah, I get that. That all sounds good, but this is a growth program. It's not a happiness program. So like, let's make sure we keep focused on what we want to be. And I remember hearing that and thinking like, why would they say that? And like, because I'm always trying to get to the root of like what's underneath it. And a hypothesis, at least that we have to consider, has to be that back to trust. Employers don't trust employees. Like, yeah, all else equal, I would gladly treat them well and all the employee engagement and morale and all the things if you can guarantee me we're going to get the growth and we're going to get the work done. But maybe it's human nature. I don't know. But like employers seem to have this view of like, but I can't trust that. So I need to control it more and I need to be more focused on these other things and force employees to do what I want rather than to treat them well and just hope they'll do what I want. How do you think about that? Like, is there any truth to that? Or is that just truly like a misguided myth that people have that the more control I exert, the better off we'll be?
I think that the more control I have, the better off we'll be is a myth.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different motivation theories. And when it comes down to it, because essentially leaders are there to motivate their employees, right? Or I like the word inspire better
Mm,
because your leaders can either really inspire the employees to go out there and do great work and do a lot of it. And, but they're there to motivate. Or the boss, the leader, can really drill down. And the only way that they do get something is by really beating that person down. And you will do this. They hold threats over them. You're not going to get the raise. You may be fired. And then if the person feels threatened, what happens? Fight, flight, or freeze, right?
mhm.
and usually it's flight. So they'll go to another employer that doesn't beat them down or threaten them. And so it comes down to motivation theory,
Mm,
whichever one you like to use, whether it's Maslow's or hygiene or what. And so that's where it is. And I don't think that it's really the leaders. I think that the workplace is changing and it needs to continue to change. It needs to evolve. And we see it in a lot of organizations now where organizations are playing to people's strengths and realizing that we have this job description, but let's carve some pieces out that this person can't do or
mm,
won't do or isn't capable of doing. Give those to somebody else who can, and then play to that person's strengths. Give them those responsibilities that they really can thrive in, and then you'll see incredible growth.
mm, mm. This the thread of trust runs through. I'm so glad you picked that value, because there's we may have touched on this before, but there's also this thread, and it's a big thing in society today of like, back to the entitlement point of like, I think a lot of employers, again, conceptually would hear that, employers would hear that and say like, I get that, that makes sense. But like, what if it goes too far? Then like, what responsibility do the employees have? If I keep giving them and trying, all right, you don't like that part of work, we'll carve that out, we'll give it to somebody else. And it starts to feel like you're just, hand holding them or coddling them in some way. And I know what you're saying is like, why do we have to jump to that extreme? Just to treat them with respect doesn't mean you have to coddle them. But I think that's always a fear that's there too, that if I go too far, they're going to take advantage of it. They're going to exploit it. And there's some fear, there's a lack of trust in humanity, in human nature and employees, that they'll do their part in this. Do you see that come up at all in the work that you do, that that's like a fear people have?